Hi, and thank you for coming back. And we're here with Dr. Joe Dispenza, and we're talking about how to change your mind. Before the break, Joe, sometimes I hear people ask that question, what is the difference between our mind and our brain? How would you answer that one?
That's a fair question to ask.
Good.
Well, some people say that, when we talk about changing our mind, we're not talking about the fickleness that people make based on circumstances to make choices based on one decision or another decision. When we talk about changing our mind, we're talking about literally rolling up a whole set of automatic attitudes and thoughts and actions and recreating, unlearning an old aspect of self and relearning a whole new aspect of self. Now, neuroscience used to say that the brain was hardwired, meaning you're born with a certain amount of circuits and connections, and you're pretty much going to turn out like your parents or close to your parents, and that's the end of the story. But now they're saying that that's absolutely not true, that through learning and experiencing, we can begin to modify the brain. Now, the brain is an organ where there's about 100 billion neurons seamlessly wired together. And they used to say neurons were like wires, but in fact, each neuron is like a computer with a lot of megabytes of RAM. So the way neurons assemble themselves and how they connect determines our mind. Now, because there's 100 billion neurons pieced together in the brain, where there's the greatest number of neurons, there's the greatest amount of intelligence, the greatest ability to learn, and the most control over modifying our behaviors to have new experiences. There's also neurons assembled in the brain that have to do with subconscious mechanisms. Your heart beatings right now, you're digesting your food, your kidneys are filtering blood. That's all happening in a different set of neurological actions. Well, the brain is the organ that processes thought, and without life, the brain is just an organ no different than a liver or a kidney or a gallbladder. The mind is the brain in action. The mind is the brain at work. Mind is what the brain does. So because there's 100 billion neurons, and give you an idea of how much 100 billion is, if you took a sheet of paper and you stacked 100 billion sheets of paper on top of it, it would be 5,000 miles high. So that's almost, 10,000 kilometers, just a little under that.
About 8.
Yeah, about 8 or 9.
Yeah.
So we have these individual biocomputers that can assemble themselves, and the way they assemble themselves is that the brain tends to reflect our environmental experiences. So we have our environmental experiences and we have our genetics that we inherit from our parents, and both of those two elements, nature and nurture, environment and genetics, tends to give us the sum total of our individual self. Mind is when the brain is working a certain way. It's when the brain is turned on and it's working. So what happens with most people is they tend to attend to the same thoughts. They attend to the same feelings. They attend to the same memories. And this mobile thing called attention, if we keep it on the same thoughts and the same feelings and the same behaviors, then we produce the same level of mind consistently. And I think that's the tragedy, because if you look at one of the things that people have in common that live above 100 years old, one of the 4 things they have in common is that they never stop learning. So when we stop learning and we start feeling, I think we're headed for our genetic destiny.
Okay. What I would like to ask you here is, the starting to feel, an example. One of the things you discussed yesterday with people who were sick, had a disease, and the commonality of those that were able to move through to wellness and those that took their diagnosis as basically a death sentence. What was the difference in how they changed? And
I think, I mentioned 4 things in the seminar yesterday in my research with spontaneous remissions. My research over the last 8 years has been studying people with serious health conditions: cancer, diabetes, high blood pressure, high cholesterol levels, thyroid imbalances, lung conditions, rare genetic disorders that medical science had no solution for. And these people basically changed their mind. And You know, we have this element in us called the human spirit, and that translates into, in terms of personality, it translates into will. And I think that when people make up their mind about their life, you know, when we make a firm decision about something, I think that's the moment that the mind and body begin to work together. You know, we're so wishy-washy in our decisions. We say one thing, but we tend to do something else.